Respected colleagues and my dear friends, it gives me great pleasure to preside over this particular session. With the permission of the organizers, I would like to make a very small announcement at the outset. I share with you with profound grief the news that Jagadguru Kripalaji Maharaj has left this mortal world and has attained the divine abode this morning. He is a great soul and he stood for universal spirituality. And so we may remain in silence for just about 30 seconds. If you wish to sit, it's all right. If you want to stand up, and pray and pay our homage to that great soul. We will straight away go to the session and the papers. The first paper is going to be rendered by Dr. K. Varalakshmi of the Sanskrit Academy, Usmania University, Hyderabad. The title of her paper is Heightening the Personality Through Spirituality. Please introduce yourself for a minute and then proceed. Yeah, thank you.
I'm Dr. Varalakshmi, Deputy Director of Sanskrit Academy. It's a research institute. I'm going to present my paper on heightening the personality through spirituality. Heighten your personality through spirituality to such an extent that the God Almighty may be pleased to consult you what is to be done. Thus, the world-renowned poet Iqbalji said. So, I am starting with the Urdu poet Iqbalji's saying, and entire paper is focused on Vedic culture. I want to say, by presenting this and starting with the Iqbalji's verse, that all religions preach universal values. And we find not only in these two, in every religion we find. So, education, human resource development must be value oriented, must help the youth to capture the spirit of our culture and pass it on to the new generation. Vedas, earliest literature of mankind, the spirit of universality and the attitude of tolerance are found in Vedas. They preach Samanvaya or harmony. Samanvaya, it is the heart of Indian culture. It found expression in a spirit of universality in the field of religion, in the field of art, in the field of politics, and in the field of the search of knowledge. India, a land of plurality. In the Atharva Veda, we have that vision translated into a social experiment of India as a land of plurality. Plurality of people, plurality of languages, plurality of religions. And that concept and experiment commencing to inspire our cultural experiment in India from so early. This is the verse which is found in Vedic literature. Janam bibharti baudha vivachasam nana dharmanam pruthivi yathaukasam sahasram dhara dravinasya meduham dhruveva dhenu anapaspuranti. Pruthivi yathaukasam. The earth is one home which holds people together according to their respective attitudes and interests. Bahudha vivachasam janam bibharti. The earth holds people speaking different languages. Prithvi nana dharmanam janam bibharti. The earth holds people following different religions. Sahasram dhara dravinasya me duham druveva dhenu anapaspuranti. The earth, like an immobile steady cow while milking, makes us prosperous through thousand streams of wealth and prosperity. Vedic socialism, secularism, and democracy. The famous Vedic invocation preaches the human beings to see the dream of happy community. Samvanana Sukta throws light on Vedic socialism. It is a unique prayer of social brotherhood in which the devotee invokes the Lord of the world to inspire mankind with a feeling of love. It proclaims that all of us should be bound together with a. Something is missing here. Sangachadvam samvadadvam samvahmanamsi janatam devaha bhagam yatha purve samjananaha upasate. We know this hymn very well. Let us move together, let us speak together, let our minds be attuned together, even like the gods who of yore knew with one mind and together had their share of enjoyment. Samanah mantra samiti samani samanam manasah chittamesham samanam mantram abhimantraye vas samanena vaha vishajuhomi. Together, may they utter the mantra, may they unite together, may their mind be one, their consciousness mingle. I utter the same mantra with you all equally. I make the offering. Samani vah akuti samana hrudayani vah samanam astu vah manah yata vah susaha sati. May your earning be one, may your heart be one, may your mind be one, so that your union may be perfect. The Madhu Sukta from Rigveda and Atharvaveda visualize domestic harmony and social equality. For the home it is said that the father, the mother, the brother, the sister, all should be knit together in a bondage of love and affection to each other. They should speak to each other as if it's honey. Anuvratah pituh putri matra bhavatu sammana jaya patye madhumatim vacham vadashantavam ma bhrata bhrataram dikshat ma swasaram utvaswasa samyanchah savratah bhutva vacham vadata bhadraya. For the society, it is said that each and every one of its members should be treated on a footing of equality. They should have a common kitchen, a common drinking place, a common aim in life, and just as the cow loves her newborn and keeps watch on it, so should men and women in the society love one another, and each one should look to the interest of others so that everyone's interests are met. Sahrudayam sammanasyam avidvesham krunomi vaha anyah anyam abhiharyata vatsam jata iva adnya. They should be emotionally one, psychologically one. Instead of looking to their individual interests, they should look to each other's interests and advance socially as one unit. Just as the spokes fixed are united in the navel of the wheel make it move, so should the different units of the society work unitedly to make the society work. Samani prapasahavah annabhagasam yoktre sahavah yunajmi samyanchah agnim saparyata arahanabhim ivabhitaha. So the Atharvaveda inspires human beings to mold life in such a manner that it may emit sweetness of honey all around. Should be sweet, our behavior should be sweet. Jihvaya agre madhume jihva mule madhulakam mama it ahakrato asah mama chittam upayasi. So, most of our problems originate from our duplicity. There is a disharmony in our thought, word, and action. In personal life as well as in social and political affairs, there is always a wide gulf which sometime or other creates personal, social, political, and economic problems. Madhumatme nishkramanam madhumatme parayanam vacha vadami madhumat bhuyamsam madhusandrushaha. So everything going from us to others should be sweet, sweeter, sweetest, like the sweetness of the sugar cane. Madhoha asmi madhutarah madhughat madhumattarah mam yit kilatvam vanah shakham madhumatim iva. So faith, the root cause of devotion and dedication. All religions lay emphasis on the efficacy of faith. Faith means reliance on the supreme power and surrendering to it in all earnestness. So one may rely on one's own efforts or surrender to the dispensation of the Supreme Being who alone guides the destiny of individuals, society, and the world at large. The 15th Sukta of the Rigveda deals with faith that is related to devotion and dedication. Fire is enkindled by Shraddha. By Shraddha is the oblation offered. I declare with my speech that faith is at the head of success in life. So the word fire is symbolic of the fire of enthusiasm that burns in the heart of a man of faith, prompting him to dedicate his life to a noble cause. Offering of oblation is also symbolic of the sacrifice one makes for one's religion or country. So, O goddess of faith, do good to him who gives, do good to him who even wishes to give, do good to him who enjoys the world with the feeling that his enjoyment is a sort of sacrifice. Please grant what I have said and work for my rise. श्रद्धया अग्निः समिध्यते श्रद्धया हूयते हविः श्रद्धा भगस्य मूर्धनि वचसा वेदयामसि. The Vedic conception is that the instinct of possession and hoarding is at the root of all economic ills of the society. So one who gives in charity must do it out of faith. One who gives the charity must enjoy it with a sense of non-attachment and does not let the wealth of country go waste. Priyam shraddhe dadatah priyam shraddhe didasatah priyam bhojeshu yujvasu idam me uttam kruthi. The conception of equality of all human beings is elucidated in the Vedic culture. None is big, none is small, all are equal as brothers and all together move on for prosperity. The common father is eternally young, he is self-maintained, does not depend on full. The common mother is Prishni matter, which is prolific in abundance for men. They are neither big nor small, nor have they grown to be in the middle, but they all, with courage, scale upward, all equally well born, with earth as their mother, all divine mortals may come to us very well. So Vedas preach socialism and equality. It says one is neither big nor small nor midway. The effort of all is upward. This upward movement is towards the divine, the movement of the mortals towards the immortal. It also states that one has the right to feed himself without saying that none goes without food. I tell the truth, he is practically senseless who stores wealth. This storage is almost his murder. By such a storage, neither noble people are helped nor one's friends. One who eats alone without sharing with others, he eats nothing but sin alone. So Soma Sukta is very emphatic about the path of peace. O great peacemaker Soma, we take oath that we hold your mind in our body. Body is ours, mind is yours. Not only we, but our progeny will also carry out your wishes. Live with us a peaceful existence. We take an oath that we shall not deflect from this path of peace. So, spiritually speaking, we pray to the Lord that no evil thought may find a lodgment within mind. Evil thoughts are like enemies. We have determination in our mind to proceed on the path of peace, appreciated, proposed, and recommended by our people and the elders of our society. So, we are determined to carry our country to the path of peace. Prithvi Sukta deals with the earth as our benefactress. Man, from the beginning of history, has his social and cultural roots grounded in the earth. He associates himself with his birth. The Sukta reminds one of the feelings one develops with one's motherland. This Vedic hymn enumerates 6 virtues that sustain the earth. They are truth, righteousness, devotion to a cause, hard labor, determination to overcome, and one more is there. They are given in the form of hymn. सत्यं बृहत् ऋतं उग्रं दीक्षा तपः ब्रह्मयज्ञः पृथिवीं धारयन्ति सा नो भूतस्य भव्यस्य पत्नी उरुं लोकं पृथिवीं नः कृणोतु. Let the earth inspire the intelligence of men to level down her unevenness in the form of high and low surfaces, even though there be abundance of smooth plains. The earth bears herbs of various virtues. Let the earth spread out for us and fulfill our needs. So these low and high surfaces of earth are compared here with small and big obstacles one comes across in one's soul. But those should be sorted out. असंबाधं बध्यतः मानवानां यस्याः उद्वतः प्रवतः समं बहु नानावीर्याः ओषधिः या बिभर्ति पृथिवी नः प्रतथां राध्यतो नः. The divine forces sleeplessly and ceaselessly protect the earth who gives to the world all that she has. Let the earth yield us honey and all that is dear to us and then saturate us with grandeur. Here all the bounties are acknowledged with reverence and gratitude. The earth gives us all that we need and everything that is dear to us. It is further said that the earth by herself is helpless. It is the divine forces that protect the earth. यां रक्षन्ति स्वप्नाः विश्वदानीं देवाः भूमिं पृथिवीम् अप्रमत्तं सा नो मधुप्रियं दुहाम् अथो वुक्षत् वर्चसा. This hymn states that the earth in the state was brought down to the present solid state to skillful advisor by the divine. It also states that the immortal heart of the earth is covered with the truth and rests in the highest region. Truth is the heartbeat of life, and nothing but the truth prevails in the world, though momentarily we may find falsehood forging ahead. The truth shines at the top with all its brilliance. यार्णवे अतिसलिलम् अग्रे आसीत् यां मायाभिः अन्वचरन् मनीषिणः यस्याः हृदयं परमे व्योमन् सत्येन आवृतम् अमृतपृथिव्याः सा नो भूमिः त्विषं बलं राष्ट्रे दधातु उत्तमे. The earth is my mother and I am her son. I bow unto Mother Earth. The Vedic seers throw light on mankind with Vedic hymns to integrate humanity through these universal thoughts. Mata bhumih putroham prithivyaha namo matre prithivye cha namo matre prithivye. Vedas, oldest literature in the library of mankind, contain monotheism. Vedic culture enlightens the minds of the devotees with its hymns. The last chapter of Yajurveda enunciates basic principles required to enjoy the life. By one supreme ruler is this universe pervaded. Whatever there is in this moving world is his. Hence, find your enjoyment in renunciation. Do not covet whose is the wealth. So, four padas of hymn enunciates four principles. The world is pervaded by God, the supreme ruler. The idea conveyed is that he is omnipresent. The universe is not stationary, it is moving, and every atom of it is in motion. No motion is possible without the mover. The Supreme Lord is not only present in the universe, he is the cause of this motion. He is installed in everything, therefore, he is the maker of all, and what you enjoy is out of his grace. Hence, find your enjoyment in renunciation as it is out of his bounty that we enjoy. Don't covet the things of the world because nothing belongs to you. Everything belongs to him who is the Lord of the world. So these four principles contain the Vedic philosophy of life, the central idea being to enjoy with renunciation. Ishavasyamidam sarvam yat kinchit jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjithaham agrudah kasya sviddhanam. Vedas state that though seen, nowhere God is everywhere. He moves all, but himself he doesn't move. To the ignorant, he is far away, but to the wise, he is at hand. He pervades inside and outside of all. Etadejati tannejati taddure tadantike tadantah asya sarvasya tatpu sarvasya asya vahyatah. He overspreads all creatures. He is entirely spirit without the form either of a minute body or an extended one. which is liable to impressions or organization. He is the ruler of intellect, self-existent, pure, perfect, omniscient and omnipresent. Sah paryaga shukram akayam avranam asnaviram shuddham apapaviddam kavih manishi paribhu swayambhuh yata tatyah arthan vyadadhat shasvadibhyah shamabhyah. He who contemplates all beings in himself and himself in all beings does not view with contempt any creature. How can there be blind attachment and sorrow in one who with a full knowledge perceives oneness everywhere and whom all beings are? Yah tu sarvani bhutani atmani eva anupashyati sarvabhuteshu cha atmani tatah na vijugupsate yasmin sarvani bhutani atma eva abhut vijanatah tatra ko moha kosho kashokah ekatvam anupashyatah.
Madam, 2 minutes more.
Yes, sir. I'll come. This is another universal value. Kurvanneva karmani jijivishet samam samaha evam tvayananyatha na karma lipyate nare. The meaning is known. And mortal body and immortal self. Vedas preach that physical body is mortal, but the spirit is immortal. And Vedas instruct us to tread on the path of rectitude and to avoid committing sinful deeds. And self-realization. Vedic culture stresses upon self-realization. This realization helps mankind to know the reality. And crossing by Vidya and Avidya. By Vidya, spiritualism, one thing meant. By Vidya, another thing is meant. Thus, we have heard from steadfast wise men who have explained their meaning. So, Indian culture is rooted in Vedic thought. Vedas, comprising eternal truths, have been the lifeblood of our thought. Whatever we do or practice, we trace it to the Vedas. From time immemorial, it has been embedded in our thought that the divine life is the life which runs according to the teachings of the Vedas. Final object of man's achievement in life is to imbibe divine qualities. It is evident that the study of the Vedas must be the first requisite for imbibing the divine qualities in our life. So it can be concluded that this universal spirituality of Vedic religion brings harmony among the human beings. And thanks to all the listeners.
Thank you, Dr. Varalakshmi. She has made her point with profuse quotations from various sources. Well, as far as the path to the realization is concerned, according to Indian tradition, subscribing to the scriptures is very important indeed. But as you proceed in your spiritual exercise, you can even transcend the scriptures. That is where the universal aspect is found. Nayamatma pravachanena labhyaha na medhaya na bahuda shrutena, as it is quoted. Therefore, thank you, Varalakshmi, for your paper. We will have the questions at the end because Mr. Manoj has given me very strict instruction that we should wind up by 6 o'clock. Now we will go on to the second paper by Mr. Chandar Khanna from Toronto, Canada. He is going to speak on nurturing India's greatest contribution to human thought. Sir, please introduce yourself for a couple of seconds and then proceed.
Professor Rajaratnamji just took my phrase, my Nayam Atma Prabhachanen Labhyo Namedhaya Bahuna Shrutena, except that I was going to refer to that as something that is almost identical, along with Tena Tektena Bhunchataha, from Taoist philosophy by Tao Te Ching, China. Nurturing of the Indian thought is not only in India, but also outside of India. But that's another day, another paper, another discussion. I was asked to give introduction to myself, and I really don't have much to say, except that I do have one qualification to be here, and that's my mumukshutva. I'm not a scholar, I'm not a doctor, I'm a former banker, but my main qualification to be in the presence of the lotus feet of Swami Chinmayanand, a birthplace of Adi Shankaracharya, the two nurturers, presence of scholars and rishis and swamis and sages, and That my only qualification is mumukshutva. I am grateful to Dr. Talwarji, Dr. Shitalwar, Dr. Rana for this opportunity for it to come. My brief paper on nurturing of India's greatest contribution to human thought is in 4 brief sections. The contextualizing of perennial thoughts. What are these thoughts that a person in my diaper stage of understanding thinks of? The second one being the nurturing of these thoughts over millennia. The aberrations that creep in every now and then. The viruses, the aberrations. And finally, a faint hope that in millennia to come, there will be future streams of nurturers as they have been in the past. These are the 4 sections. All cultures and societies run the risk. All societies and cultures run the risk of becoming footnotes of history unless and until they have some central dominant thoughts which can be independently verified universally and over a period of time, different eras, different people. That's one. Number 2, future generations are there to nurture those thoughts. We have the Middle Kingdom of Egypt, Mesopotamia, Assyrians, ancient Xi'an cultures, etc., etc. They have not necessarily retained the originality as we have been blessed in the Sanatan Vedic Dharma. Central thoughts, independently verified through millennium. But these central thoughts that and I feel very awkward in being able to stand here in front of scholars, like almost everyone here in this room. But for someone like me at my diaper stage of understanding, there are 3 basic themes, if you wish. Themes that, number 1, macroscopically, if you indulge me, macroscopically there is an intentionality. Macroscopically there is an intentionality which animates creation as a whole, including in between creations, the alanga matra, when there's the gunas are in perfect equilibrium between Big Bang, Big Crunch, Big Bang, even the gap, there's intentionality. Number 2, at the micro level, an aspect of that same ultimate reality animates all living and non-living. And number 3, only the humans. From stone to plant to animal to humans, and of course we shouldn't think this is the final stage. As Aurobindo has said, we have yet to evolve. We are evolving, yet to evolve, but only humans at this point in time have the capacity, the intellect, the buddhi, to be able to academically understand this unity of existence and the means of being able to achieve it. These broad themes between themselves accommodate theism, polytheism, monotheism, agnosticism, atheism, everything. Lokayata, Charvaka, everything is accommodated. So it's not true to say that this is polytheism gone amok. That's only one part of it. There's 6 billion population on this planet. There's 6 billion ways of trying to attain the ultimate reality. Not just 5 or 6 gods and goddesses, or 50,000 or 100,000, but 6 billion. Whenever a person like me, just a qualification, when a person like me attempts or pretends to speak with ultimate reality, there's a caution note, and the cautionary note that I will take is from the Nasidya Suktam of the Rig Veda, the hymn to creation, speaks of uncertainty or the certainty principle. Who can say with certainty amongst us as to when or why it all came to be? Surely the gods, small g, would not know because of man's creation. Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, man's creation, imagination. So the notion of speaking but ultimate reality is so bizarre. Forget about me, but even the rishis. So even the sages, prophets, from all traditions, whenever they speak of ultimate reality, they're paraphrasing the narrative. The narrative is incomplete. Nothing that is finite can speak about that which is infinite. It is there, it is partial, incomplete, and to the extent of the receptivity of the person listening to it. So that's a caveat. So a person like me shouldn't even dare to speak of the ultimate reality, but that's mumukshutva. The ultimate reality of 1,000 names and no name, neti, not this, deep silence. And given the insufficient human expression, sages have gone. Mandukya Upanishad is one of my favorite examples. Nanta prajyam, na bahish prajyam, na vita prajyam, na prajyan ghanam, na prajyam, aprajyam. Cannot be defined, cannot be explained, cannot be inferred, cannot be debated, cannot be logically proved, disproved, cannot be explained or even understood by the mind. That is something which the sages, rishis have given those who reach that stage of maybe momentary, maybe a few days, maybe a few hours, maybe some crossed over, of course they weren't able to speak to us or address us, but that ultimate reality which is beyond our comprehension, we see evidence of it all around, but beyond our comprehension, but only at a certain point, once we burnt the karmas, once we are ready to transcend, if you wish, then and only then, I went to Kailash Mansarovar many years ago. My spiritual master asked me if I went as a tourist or as a pilgrim. I didn't understand what he meant. You go as a tourist, you pick up new karmas. You go as a pilgrim, you burn the karmas. So, coming back to the reflection of the aspect of the ultimate reality in us, these two perennially present principles, the matter principle, which is the interplay between, or interaction between matter and energy, the original E is equal to mc squared. The ring I have today is my wedding ring, 45 years ago, and it was a stardust which came on earth as gold. Tomorrow it might be a necklace of somebody's neck, another time might be a tooth filling. Nam Roop, Nam Roop, Nam Roop. Small Mool Prakriti in millions and billions of Nama Roop, name and form, but also animated by small p Purusha aspect of the ultimate reality, from the ring to this, to that, to the hair. I take my hair, throw it down there, and there's Purusha animating that as well, as the carpet, as the tree, as the speaker system, as everything, as the sound. So small p and small Mool Prakriti interplay between those two, an aspect of the ultimate reality. Swami Chinmayanandaji had given a beautiful example of this, and I feel again awkward, but let me move on, time is of the essence. That imagine, if you wish, a well-lit wall, even this room, everything is brightly lit, but that stage, or which Dr. Professor Ji had been pointing to, that is a little brighter lit than the rest. That is what the intensity of that consciousness between you and I and something that's non-living. It is brighter lit, it is evolving, not evolving, it has evolved to this extent, it may evolve further, as Aurobindo says, but that is the distinction between something that's non-living and living, brighter lit. Another example of that, from essence to existence to essence, and come back to the example that I had before when I went to Kailash Mansarovar, the waters that take form in a rainfall as one. Thank you, it's clearer now. I too speak fast. A drop of water which comes down to a little stream at 3:34 in the morning that you cross on the parikrama of Kailash mountain, and many have already done that. And that little drop of water, one drop of water, H2O, at 10 in the morning, another little jharna, little stream, little rivulet if you wish, and that drop of water in that goes up to become, combining with others, becomes Sindhu. First one has come to Mansarovar, Rakshasthal and Satluj. And by 3:34 in the afternoon, as you're doing the parikrama of the second day, and the third drop, rivulet, goes into Yarlang Sampa, Pailagiri, becomes Dihang and Brahmaputra. But this one drop of water, H2O, reaches Rishikesh, perfectly pure, but has a name and form. Then reaches Haridwar and Kanpur and Allahabad. Toxic waste, dead bodies, chemicals, but it still is H2O, and then it joins the Indian Ocean or the Arabian Sea or the Bay of Bengal. But the analogy finishes, the drop of water does not remember, recognize, or have a memory what it did, except it was a drop of water. It was not a Ganges anymore. It may remain submerged in the oceans, may come back as rainfall in the ocean, may come back as an iceberg, plasma in a body, may come back as Hwangho, Mississippi, Missouri, etc., etc. You and I are similar analogy, except that you and I keep coming back, not necessarily the same time. We may come back as in this planet, another galaxy, another place, until such a time that karmas have been burnt. Now, along this, coming back to the third part, the nurturing of these thoughts of a millennium. We have been uniquely blessed. The tradition of the sages, philosophers who nurtured these original revelation by the rishis, whose names we do not know, through bhasyas, karikas, which gave rise to later on expressions like Nyaya, Visheshik, Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, Vedanta, the schools of philosophy, including Lokayata, Charvaka's Lokayata, Jainism, Buddhism as well, and also for the laity, Ramayana and Mahabharata, which contain the A to Z of all that is in the Sanatana Vedic Dharma. Both Ramayana and Mahabharata, very large compared to Iliad, compared to Gilgamesh, but 100,000, 1 lakh verses, tiny, very tiny Mahabharata and Ramayana put together, compared to Manas, which is 1 million verses long, Manas or Gigaglu, 500,000, or Igaglu of Indonesia, 1 million verses, containing again Manas Sarovar, Manas from Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan. So these were the nurturers throughout millennia, whenever there were pendulums swinging. So these nurturers kept coming to us in this land of the rishis to nurture and bring back the pendulum. When the priestly influences are very strong, Shakyamuni's middle path came to be of not necessarily the need to have intermediaries. When the Vairagya of the Upanishads was misunderstood to be inaction, that's where we had, now very carefully I'm choosing the word, another perspective, a very daring creative strategy on the part of Ved Vyas to put the Upanishadic truth in the mouth of Devaki's son. The truth coming from sages whose names we do not know, but because we need the touchy, feely, so Ved Vyasa's creative, daring strategy to put this Upanishadic truth in the mouth of Devaki's son, Sri Krishna, Depranya. So these were the these are the nurturers. But along the way also, you and I, we are the consumers, if you wish. And we do not have the same capacity as the sages did, the rishis did, or their ambassadors did and have. Swami Chinmayan, present-day ambassadors, Maharishi Raman. We tend to distort those truths. And this is my third part, the aberration, distortions that come in the way. The core teachings have been there, the distortions keep coming in. It's the original Wikipedia. You and I also have the ability to keep putting Valmiki's Ramayana was Purushottam Purush, perfect but not quite. 1,000 years later, Tulsi Ramayana, by this time he'd been deified, avatar, another identity. Kamban Ramayana, and then of course Ramayana and Bali, Ram and Sita are cousins. Those are fine, but the ability for us, you and I, to change like the original Wikipedia creates distortions. In the Quran, the Jihadi Akbar, Akbar Jihad. Akbar Jihad is the internal struggle. Jihad is for internal struggle, not the struggle that we see in our present day. In the meek shall inherit the earth. Aberration. In the time of the Industrial Revolution, the meek shall inherit the earth after Sermon on the Mount has transferred since the time of the Industrial Revolution to where 15% of the world's population consumes 50% of the non-renewable sources. Aberration. This is very difficult for me to say, but I will say it. And the one aberration, that one community, one faith tradition that has not been able to remove is the aberration in our Sanatana Vedic Dharma. And I'm not talking about caste system. Not the caste system which has had its protectors, detractors, supporters, etc., etc. It has served its purpose. But the cruel part of the caste system, the cruelty, untouchability. We are at the cusp of regaining the stature that before the rishis and after the rishis, this India and China, these two countries had. We're the very cusp, we're tantalizingly close to regaining that, not in my lifetime, but maybe another 200 years from now. But as long as the vast majority of India's poorest of the poor, the lowest of the low, shall remain beyond the pale of a mandir and a temple, no matter how much we deny it, we'll never attain that status. And it has been an aberration, nothing to do with the Sanatana Vedic Dharma, but it is an aberration that we have not been able to eradicate despite the nurturers, despite the corrections by sages rishis, Maharishi Dayanand Saraswati, Chinmayanand, Aurobindo, Tagore. The constitutional wrangling has only made the matters worse. Reservations, mediocrity, Mayawati notwithstanding, a president notwithstanding, it has created reservations, have created mediocrity. What it does require is the custodians of the Sanatan Vedic Dharma, Hindu Dharma, to collectively, over 2-3 generations, to come forward and say, this has been an aberration. It is not sanctioned by the Sanatan Vedic Dharma. It is against the Sanatan Vedic Dharma. It is against the Hindu Dharma. And that is the aberration which our present day nurtures, and there's a faint hope. Lastly, the faint hope, Dr. Talwarji's passion, a faint hope for the future through universal education. Through universal education, for us not to speak to people at our level or to speak to people at the constitutional government level, are young children, young adults. This one aberration, and the hope is that somewhere along the way we also wish and pray that first we accept and recognize the aberrations, whether it's Jihadi Akbar being distorted, whether meek shall inherit the earth being distorted, the mutilation of genitalia being distorted, the slavery, the binding of the feet, etc., all these are aberrations, some of them tied to faith. In our case, untouchability has been knowingly, unknowingly tied to our faith, which is wrong. Number 2, the solution of that lies within us, not with the United Nations or with the CAA or CIA or the American government or outsiders or the Pope or our solution's us, not there, outside. 3, to reach out, as I said, our equivalent of the Arab Spring, our young people, next 2-3 generations, to collectively stand up and ask the custodian of the faith traditions to speak up against this aberration, which has been a distortion, kalank on our matha. And finally, the distinction between Shruti and Smriti. The Shruti shall never change. Even the Smriti, like the Wikipedia, does have opportunities, possibilities, potentialities for it to be changed. But we have hope, pray that there be future generations of nurturers as Sanatan Vedic Dharma has had in the past. And I thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, listening to you was like listening to a symphony music. It was so rhythmic, so beautiful. Thank you. What we understand from sir's paper is that all religions and philosophy should center around human thought, human development, human understanding. And this is what is reflected in Kalidasa's statement. Satam hi sandeha padeshu vastushu pramanam antakarana pravurtayah. When you have doubt, well, Guru, your Rishi, your sage, your scriptures, fine. Also listen to your inner voice. Listen to your own inner voice. That's very important for human development. Well, we will definitely have some questions on this. Before that, I would like to request the third speaker of the day, of the afternoon, Dr. Sunil Kitkaru. Am I correct? From Nagpur. He is going to present a paper on faith and religion in Northeast India tribal area. Very important from the present day context. I request him to render this paper. Please introduce yourselves for a couple of minutes, sir.
Hari Om. Satyam Param Dhimahi Atmavata Sarvabhuteshu. I am Sunil Vitthal Kitkaru from Nagpur, Maharashtra. By education I am engineer. By profession I am a financial advisor. I have interest in the tribal field of our India. So I work in that area. And that's why I present my paper about the faith and religion of the Northeast India's tribal area. So, we know the India, for eastern area, the Calcutta is the last gate. And for the south, Kerala is the last gate. And if one asks who people live in Kerala, we say Malayalis. In West Bengal, Bengalis. But if we ask which type of people lives in Meghalaya or in Manipur or in Arunachal, the answer, I think, is not expected. So this type of poor knowledge and affection about this area, when I think about that area, I feel that is that area where from Mahabharata, Bhima married with Hidimba, Arjuna with Chitrangada in Manipur, and when we celebrate the Diwali, the Narkasur was killed in Guwahati, in Assam. So this is connection with this area from Mahabharata time. But in these hills and terrain, now the new thing which I observed from the 25 years, I will present for 10 minutes in paper and 10 minutes for a photo to understand the things. The indigenous peoples or the tribal peoples, we in Hindi it call as the Janajati of Northeast Bharat, invariably believe in the existence of the one supreme being, who is the creator, preserver and the destroyer of the universe. They believe that God is basically a formless substance, which is one and infinite. The tribal call them by different names. The Doni Polo by the Abatani group of Arunachal Pradesh, the Rangphras by Rangphrites, the Tinwan by the Zheliang group of the Nagaland, and the Bathau by Bodos by the Assam. The Khasi tribes and the Zheliang tribes, especially they worship the formless God, while others worship him through some certain forms and symbol. The tribal people believe in a faith which is very old. Their ancestors from one generation to another transmit their knowledge to next generation orally. So it is similar aspect about Vedic culture. It is like a Vedic chanting in the Bhagavad Gita also said in 17th chapter, 3 shloka number, Sattvan Rupa Sarvasya Shraddha Bhavati Bharata Shraddha Mayoyam Purusho Yo Yachchanda Sa Eva Saha. The son of Bharata, the faith of man develops according to the perception of his mind, depending on his nature, and evolves according to his faith. As the faith is, so is the person. There is also a priesthood system among the tribes. They are original born. That means the son of priest cannot be a priest. It is a God gift. He is a treasurer of the spirituality. This priest can communicate with the spirits. He can go in a dhyana or meditation. He is really a different person to come in contact with the Supreme Being. He lives alone in the deep forest for so many days without food. His character is fine. He is a simple, honest and visionary. He can heal the peoples and perform the puja, worship, the god and goddesses for the different events, festivals and welfare of the society. There are so many, for the spiritual part, there are so many folk tales, folk dance, which build the morality of the society. The society believes in the different type of gods and goddesses. It can be a hill god, it can be air, water, fire, forest, etc. The Janajati peoples, they are real spiritual peoples. That's why they love the mother nature. According to them, dharma or religion is nothing but to exhaust our sense of moral obligations towards to those to whom we owe. And the Janajatis, their special character is that if you ask them who you are, so they said, we are not Hindus, we are not Muslims, we are not Christians. That is their answer. We are eternally indebted to our mother nature or its elements like air, water, fire, earth and sun, etc. because we cannot survive without them even for a few minutes. So if one expresses his sense of gratefulness through certain worship and prayers to the god and goddesses of power behind their elements, then also there is nothing wrong. The Nishi tribe of Arunachal Pradesh, they celebrate the Neukum festivals, and the Tangsa, they celebrate the Rangphrites Harang festival. The Neo means the earth and the Kum means the worship for the earth. The tribal people don't claim on the land. As we say that, we say, this is my 2-acre land, this is my 3-acre lands, like that. But the tribal mind about the land, they say, no, we have no land. We belong to the land just as the birds and the trees. We are the part and parcel of the mother nature. So by natural, the tribal peoples are spiritual and universal. They don't differentiate in mankind on any differences. They worship and love everything in universe. To inculcate the spiritual values, they introduce in this part, especially of the Arunachal Pradesh, some parts of the Nagaland and some parts of the Manipur, they started their weekly prayers and the revivalism, or you can say it is reformation in their worship, to teach young generation. So they go to their prayer centers like Doni Polo Dere, Rangphra temples, which try to protect society from nowadays materialism. There is no assault on the woman, no beggars, no thief in the tribal areas. The credit goes to the spiritual value. Anyone can go to the tribal hut without introduction. They will welcome you. It is possible in a big city. This spirituality character of tribals and the fairness, what this noble character is, the second name of spirituality. More the person lives in the touch of the mother nature, more he is with the spirituality. But what actually spiritualism is? The basic concept of spiritualism is to know about the Supreme Being or to feel His presence who created us. That's why the tribals are more versed with the spirituality than any other. They are simple, pure and honest. As Mother Nature itself, for them every path of earth is a very pure and sacred. So in very parts in Meghalaya, there are still forests. No one cut that forest because they said this is the sacred forest, we will not cut it. Such type of examples there are so many. The dharma is the subject of experience and not the theory. We find the people in this region of these textures. If humanity wants to be a real in a universal and can be done only through spirituality, that should be applicable in day-to-day life. The tribal people's life is eye-opener. Their spiritual treasure, story, belief, dance, prayer, everything is a torchbearer to the modern world. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, 11 shloka, ये यथाम माम प्रपद्यते तास्थैव भजाम्यहम मम वत्मानुवर्तन्ते मनुष्या पार्थ सर्वशा. That means the people may worship me in a different manner and it is a reward them accordingly. Everyone in all circumstances say, O son of Partha, follow my path. It is the approach we need. In Doni Polo, Doni means the sun and Polo is the moon. In Doni Polo faith, they say to see to the Doni, that means the sun, that sun according to tribal is a female and the Polo moon means a male. So they said to the Doni that please sharpen our mind intellectually like a sun rays and well by Doni's shine and soft our mind, that should be a patience, calm, by like the Polo's light. That is the great thinking of these tribal peoples. And the power behind that Doni Polo is called Doni Polo Army. And that Doni Polo Army is nothing but the Supreme Being. That's the simple paper. So I will show you the pictures. That is the one of the picture of Arunachal Pradesh. How difficult is that area. You can see the river is there and the bridge of the bamboos is constructed there. There are so many, 100 places like this in the Arunachal Pradesh. And the tribal peoples live in this jungle, forest. Next. This is the temple of the Doni Polo. This tribe belongs to the Nishi tribe of Arunachal Pradesh. This is the priest. They call it the Nipu. And he is praying that one circle is there. And that circle is of the Doni Polo. And their ritual method is different from us here. And the back behind is from bamboos and one cap on his head. That is a special design. Next. This is the clear picture of this Doni Polo center, which called as a Nidar Namlo in the Nishi tribe. And among the Adis, it called as a Doni Polo Dere. These are the different, that symbol, that Doni Polo is in my hand. This is that locket they built and this locket is there, everyone's
Neck.
This is the Doni Polo locket and that circle is encircled by this space. That is the very important. Next. This is the total picture of the Arunachal Pradesh. These are the different tribes in different districts and they are Mishimis, Adis, Nishis, Apatanis and everyone has their own way of worship and no one forced them to do this. They by their own nature developed these all worshippers within these 25 years but from 1000 years they are preaching it orally. That is a wonderful thing. Next. This is Rangphra, and this Rangphra is in Changlang district of Arunachal Pradesh. It symbols like a Shiva to us, but he is not Shiva. But the one executive engineer, Likham, in his dream, that's meant this picture came. He is an executive engineer. Now he left the job, he left the money, and he works for this Rangphra. Rang means Paramatma, and Phra means the manifestation of the Rang. That is we all. That is their concept. And this Rangphra has more than 48 temples in the Changlang district, and some few is in the Nagaland. And the Rangphra speciality is that they light in the 5 lamps, which denotes matter, energy, space, time, and the law governing all these things. There are 5 lamps. It is not shown in this picture, but they believe, and they have that 5 lamps in every temple. Next. This is the picture in the Manipur, and this is one of the festival they are celebrating. And the festival is what? There is always fighting between the hill and the lower plain peoples. So they have a festival. One hillman sitting there from the left side. They are welcome the hill peoples, and the plain peoples welcome them. For that they celebrate and they have a feast. Next. This is the same that they are greeting each other, the hill people and the plain peoples. So in hill the tribal peoples live. In generally plain we say that we civilized people live, but there is a gap. So in that gap, they show like that. So that picture was from Manipur. Another few pictures are there. Actually, there are more than 450 tribal groups in the northeastern areas, and some are Christians, so they follow directly the Christianity. Some they are following their old ancestor religion, like this and this religion. But those who are Christians there, even today, they are not living their dance, dress, nothing is changed except the God. God is only changed. Jesus Christ come, but their dances, festivals, all is going on. So that some type of pictures are in front coming. I will show you. So even in the modern times, they are maintaining their religion, which is very unknown to our Indian brothers all over the country. Next. This is the welcome dance for the deities. They perform in a different dresses. And you see how the rhythmic, the dresses, the combinations. You see what the atmosphere may be there at the festival and the prayer. Next. These all are the Christians tribes, but they are not leave their dresses, nothing. They are dancing and they are doing their festival celebrations. Next. This part is from also Manipur. Next. This is the Loktak lake of the Manipur, and all tribal peoples, they are moving and enjoying the festival mood. There is no discrimination between the man and woman. You see, the woman and man, they are enjoying at the same time. This is their temple and they are worshipping. Next. And this is the Manipur's temples. Some Meiteis, they feel that they are from Naga Vansha. So they believe on the Naga. There is one serpent picture you see on this chair. Next. This is the whole hill and combination. This is the tribal man in the red, and this is the plain civil man from Imphal, Manipur. They are greeting each other. Next. And this is the modern picture. What you see in the dance and all traditional dresses, these are the same girls. They are now modern, but the same girls, they are going to the temples also. That is the scene there. Next. And this is the bamboo dance, the famous dance from the Mizo and Kut tribes. But what we see, they have a dance, they good dance, but they have no song. Because due to the change of religion, they forget their song. They forget their song, they forget their gods. So that is the situation of these Mizo peoples. Next. This is the special Manipuri people's dance and the traditional dress. And the Manipur dance is very famous. Next. And it is finished. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sunil. Well, one of the greatest mistakes that we have committed in India is to have neglected the tribals in the border areas. In ancient times, the sages and saints, they resorted to the forest and remote areas and performed penance and inspired the tribal people. The tribal people were given an honorable status. They were called kinnaras, kimpurushas, almost raised to the status of semi-divine beings. The Arthashastra emphasizes that the tribal should be taken care of and that they must be given responsibilities. In fact, he suggests that there should be a tribal unit in the army. But unfortunately, over the years, we have lost some of these traditions. But it is now time to reverse this particular trend. The tribals should be brought to the mainstream without destroying their culture, for that matter. They should continue with their culture. They should not forget their songs, their dances, their culture. But their lifestyle must be improved. They must be educated, and the whole area must be developed. That is what we have to look at. On behalf of the organizers, on behalf of every one of you, on behalf of my own self, I thank all the participants, the paper presenters. I congratulate them. I thank every one of them.